Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. It is the Monday show on a Tuesday. Myself and Aaron Stokes are ready to reflect on Newcastle's 0-0 draw with Leicester City, the point that secured top four football and Champions League football for next season. And let's just say to the critics that Newcastle United are in the Champions League, not through luck, but by merit there, through hard work, commitment and effort, through a game plan and a belief that Newcastle are not to fear, but to be feared. I told you last week not to worry because it was in their hands, and collectively the club did what it had to, and that meant you guys as well cheering the players over the line, and the players put in the shift that was needed as well. And to those critics who claim Newcastle's success has been done by spending an old untold fortune, I say to you, look closer, much closer, because this is not about money, but about the effort on the training pitch, improving each and every player. It's not only lazy to say that Newcastle bought their way to Champions League football, it's incorrect. Betty Howe and the fans will not worry about those who play down the club's achievements, for they won't lose any sleep over it, for they know the truth, they know the reality, and that is quite simply, Aaron, Eddie Howe's Champions League Magpies. Newcastle United in the Champions League.
There we go. Podcast done.
Done?
Time to
That's
go
all
to
we
the
need to
pub.
do?
Yeah, that's all we need to say, I think.
It still doesn't sound real.
Don't think it's going to sink in for a while. Certainly didn't sink in last night. Don't think starting to maybe now this afternoon, but yeah, I think until we hear that famous anthem at St James's Park, it's not going to feel real.
I'm very glad that those at the club did not listen to certain sections of the Newcastle fan base on social media who called for the Champions League anthem to be played at full time, because that would have been
A little bit
awful.
cringy, yeah.
Yes, but we will look forward to hearing it in September, come the first game at St James's Park. It wasn't easy last night. Obviously, the Drew 0-0, they would have liked to, of course, have gone out with all 3 points, to have scored in the final home game of the season. They had their chances, but Leicester City clearly came with a game plan that was to sit back, frustrate Newcastle, could get to the hour mark. You throw on your Maddison, you throw on your Harvey Barnes and try and nick the win, which they did at the very end. And that's where we're going to start with Sir. I've knighted him. I haven't got the power, but I've knighted him. Sir Nick Pope.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about you being in the ground, but the last 5-10 minutes of that game, you felt like, okay, Leicester could actually snatch this. After sitting back and camping in their own half for 92 minutes, it would have been criminal for them to snatch it. But
I have to say, them last 5 minutes, I know more about the back ends of the Milburn, the final wall in the Milburn stand, because I couldn't watch the game.
yeah, it
I had
was.
my back to it.
There was just this sort of nervous energy swirling around the stadium where Leicester had suddenly decided to actually give it a go. And when that volley gets hit by Castagna, I think, and that's in the back of the net, and it's going down to the final day. But yeah, that's why he's Sir Nick Pope.
It is. And just talk to me about that save, because to have nothing to do for so long and then all of a sudden you're called upon, it was a real reaction save. And that is why, for me, he's the best goalkeeper in the Premier League.
I mean, big call, but I don't think many people would disagree with you. I think Eddie Howe, was asked about it last night and said that's what you get from him. I mean, he's a top-class shot stopper. And as you say, to not have anything to do for 93 minutes, just to be stood there, a couple of goal kicks, absolutely fantastic reflex save. But my heart was in my mouth at that point, and I thought, is it going to be one of those nights?
Yeah, I did. Do you know what? No, actually, no, I didn't, because I never felt Leicester were going to nick it. And we mentioned this quite often as well. I think if you believe you're vulnerable, then that will spread around the ground and then it will spread onto the pitch. And Newcastle, yeah, they dropped deep in them last 5 minutes, but I always felt they were going to get it clear. I always felt they would get it away. And obviously, look, there's always a chance the opposition can score. But also, when you've got a top-class goalkeeper in net who's always ready to react when called upon, I mean, there's always a chance that he'll stop whatever comes his way, and he did. And I don't know about you, I've watched that several times today. I've just watched it on repeat because it's such a good save.
I haven't. I'll be honest. I haven't watched it back, and
You
I
haven't
feel
watched
like
it
I feel like
back?
even when I watch it back for the first time, in my head it'll still be flying at the net. I'm not ready to believe that it was a save at that point in the game. I mean, let's be completely frank. If Leicester had won that game last night in the 93rd minute, that would have been the biggest Premier League robbery of the season. I've never seen a team sit so deep for so long, not even attempt to press at all anywhere on the pitch. And I'm going to be completely honest with you. I was sat there during the game thinking, what are Leicester doing? Relegation battle, their Premier League future's on the line. What an abject performance. And I will admit, sitting in the press conference with Dean Smith, the Leicester manager, after, my mind was changed. Because actually, he made a couple of good points. They wanted to sit deep. They wanted to soak up pressure. They wanted to stay in the game. They thought if they attacked Newcastle, they were going to be cut open, as we've seen Newcastle do many times this season. And actually, I'll apologise to Dean Smith for my during the game thoughts.
Do you know what? When I got in last night, the better half asked, "How was it 0-0? Who played better?" And I said, "Well, if you're asking me whose game plan worked, it was Leicester City's.
Yeah.
Because they came with the game plan to say to Newcastle, they were essentially inviting them on. They were saying, you come and attack us." And I still think Newcastle aren't 100% comfortable when they have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
They do like it when teams leave space and they can, hit them quick on the transition. Whereas Newcastle last night really had to pass the ball around. And it was a mature performance. It really was. There was some lovely bits of play within that 90 minutes, but they did struggle to really break Leicester. I know they had their chances, but what pleased me, it was another, what they did well, Newcastle, I thought, even though they didn't get the goal. And it was another side to this Eddie Howe Newcastle United that we don't maybe often see. And it shows that they're not just a one-trick pony. They've got other ways of playing against sides.
Yeah, Leicester made it really, really tough, especially the first 40 minutes. Newcastle were sort of restricted to shots from quite a way out. Fabian Schär trying to get goal of the season with one of the worst volleys I've seen this season. It wasn't until, as I say, the last 5 minutes of the first half that Newcastle actually got into the groove and, really should have been ahead before the break. Or, as we know, second half, there was more chances to come. But Leicester really did ride their luck. I think, yes, it was a solid defensive performance, but if one of those chances went in, there's no way they're getting anything from the game. But credit to them, they came with a plan, they executed it, and a point in the end isn't too bad a result for them.
Joseph says we played good football. Tracy says we played them off the park, and Les just says happy Tuesday. Newcastle did have their chances. They hit the woodwork 3 times in the game. There was a couple of really good saves that Evenson had to make, and it was probably more that their luck was out than anything else, because as you say, it just takes one of those goals to go in and Newcastle probably go and score 2 or 3. I mean, admittedly, I put a 6-0 bet on and that didn't quite come in.
So you're telling us you're the reason that the drew 0-0 jinxed it.
Someone did tweet me afterwards and said the heart nearly gave him once I'd said 6-0 and it didn't end.
on another day, it generally could have been 3 or 4. I mean, Wilson's hit the post from 2 yards. Miggy's hit the post. Bruno's somehow not put it over the line from a yard. I mean, on another day, they would have had an absolute hatful. It just wasn't to be.
We had Longstaff forcing a good save and Isak as well. And that was a lovely bit of play. Trippier to Miggy into the box, and then a wonderful pick out. And Isak did everything right, really. And Everson had to be on the top of his game to stop that.
Yeah, they played some, as somebody said in the comments there, they played some really good football. I really enjoyed Isak and Anderson together down the left. Thought they combined really well in the first half. Miggy and Trips back to doing what they've been doing all season at St James's Park. And yeah, as you say, Everson had to be on his game, because otherwise it would have been over pretty quickly.
And Newcastle started fast. You could see the way they were moving the ball. Isak was creating a lot of issues for Leicester out on the flank, and Miggy down the right as well. I mean, in the entirety of the game, they had 78% possession, 628 accurate passes. So I think it was 708 overall. 628 were accurate. Leicester had 123 passes. I mean, when you hear them numbers, it shows you just how dominant Newcastle United were. And like I say, the luck was probably a bit out, but I also felt at the same time they probably could have played until next week and not found a way through.
Yeah, that right there is why I was so convinced Leicester were going to snatch it at the end, because it was one of those nights where it was just never going to go in for Newcastle, and I thought it would just be sod's law that they go up the other end, and with their first chance of the game, they snatch it. As you've touched on, it shows a very different side. Newcastle have been so gung-ho at times this season in terms of, scoring 4 or 5 goals in a game. They had to work for it last night, and even though they weren't really, ever at threat of losing it for 93 minutes, they're going to have a lot more of that next season, where teams think we're just gonna let you play and hope we can try and snatch them on the counter.
Now, for what I've praised Leicester City's game plan coming in and trying to get a point, I do think, though, they would have, had they pushed Newcastle a bit more in those last 10 minutes, the result could have been totally different, because very early on in the second half, in fact, in the first half, I mean, Fabian Schär was essentially playing as a second right winger. They were so far up the pitch, Newcastle. Leicester was so deep, but they just didn't seem to want to push out at Newcastle. And I think they've maybe missed a trick, because what we saw in the last 5 minutes, when Newcastle were looking a little bit nervous, Fabian Schär stopped on the ball twice, and Longstaff managing to recover when he slips, and obviously you've got the save that was made by Nick Pope. Newcastle were looking a wee bit nervous, and I think Leicester missed a trick, because I think they could have forced that nervousness a lot earlier in that second half had they had the desire to do so.
I think when they brought Harvey Barnes on, I thought, okay, maybe now they change the system up. They changed from 4-4-2 and sort of had 3 attacking midfielders and a central striker. And still, they just didn't want to. They just didn't want to press. They didn't want to counter. There was a moment in the second half when Newcastle again were camped in Leicester's half. Schär loses it to Ndidi, and actually, if Ndidi just had a little bit of patience about him and looked up, he would have seen that actually it was a 2-on-2. And if he'd played that ball over the top to Vardy, I don't think Sven Botman would have caught him. Instead, it was rushed. It went out of play. Vardy had to turn around and say, "What on earth are you doing?" And I agree. I think if Leicester had actually said, you know what, we can actually capitalise on Newcastle on the counter, it might be a different story. But as I said, Dean Smith in the press conference after made no apologies for the way they played. He said that was the plan. We stuck to it. I know it wasn't pretty, but we knew if we tried to play Newcastle at the whole game, or we tried to go 2 attacking, they would have had us. And going 1-0 down at St James's Park on a night like that last night, with that atmosphere, it would have been curtains for them.
Do you think it gives Howe food for thought for next season when he reflects back on this game and he looks at the way Newcastle United played? Like people in the comments saying, like we've said, it was mature, they were good on the ball, they were quick, they were sharp with the passing. They just couldn't find that kind of the ball. Well, they just couldn't find the goal. And do you think he looks at it and he'll want to work on just making sure maybe they're a little bit more clinical? I know people say, well, they hit the post 3 times. There's nothing you can do about that. But again, I look back on it and think they're not entirely 100% comfortable having to take the game to the opposition at the moment.
If I'm completely honest, I think even if last night hadn't happened, it would probably be something they're working on. You look at, and I'm not comparing Newcastle United to Manchester City, but in the years to come, if that's what they want to be, fighting for Premier League titles, they're going to have to get used to teams like Leicester and Everton and Wolves and all these sitting behind the ball, as pretty much every team does at the Etihad this season. So it'll come. As you say, I thought it was a mature performance without them, dominating. They didn't get frustrated. They kept trying to look. They worked some brilliant openings. It's just a shame that they couldn't get over the line with a bit of a flurry.
No, there's a very late change in the starting 11. Elliot Arneson started in place of Joe Linton, who sadly missed out. First off on Joe Linton, brilliant moments when they were doing the lap of honour where the whole ground was serenading him, and he's holding his little daughter, and his better half has kind of ushered him away from her, and she's taking a nice video of the whole crowd singing. And I think he really felt that moment as well. It's testament to how far he's come. Did they miss him against Leicester? I think Elliot Anderson had a good game. I thought he played really well. It shows you why Eddie Howe wants him in this squad. It shows you why, once again, he probably won't go out on loan next season, but a different type of player to Joe Linton.
I don't think they missed him because they didn't really need him. It wasn't a midfield battle. Samari and Ndidi just didn't want to get involved with Longstaff and Bruno. So Newcastle just sort of had full control. I was obviously, I didn't want Joe Linton to get pulled out in the warm-up. You could tell how good he was on the bench before kickoff. But I've wanted to see Anderson. We've wanted to see Anderson. We've called for it on this podcast. And actually, I think the last home game of the season was the perfect time to play him. He looked very comfortable, as I mentioned earlier. Thought him and Isaac combined brilliantly down that left-hand side. He looked assured, and I agree. I'd be surprised if he goes out on loan next season. He looks a lot fitter. He looks bigger. He looks more comfortable in this team. Hopefully, next season is the one where we see him, properly kick on and reach that potential.
Not afraid to shoot either. He sees a chance to go, he takes it, which I really, really like, because you need that. You're going to have to miss to score, is the old phrase from Malcolm McDonald. So brilliant to see that. And a good relationship, like you said, with Alexander Isak as well. There was a lot of overlapping. I think my only concern there is just to try and get the ball into the box. There was quite a few times yesterday where they either went back themselves, just didn't get the ball in the box. And maybe that was all part of what was on its stake.
Maybe, yeah. I think Isaac, certainly there's a couple of times where you think, okay, put the ball in and he cuts back on himself. But a lot of the time you had Anderson overlapping. I think, Trippier was sending a lot of balls in when Miggy was probably a bit reluctant to. I thought there was a good mix yesterday. They were very, very, frustrated by Leicester in the first half. Second half, it opens up more. I thought it was an assured performance without the goals.
Graham says Anderson did not look out of place. Time and patience required with him. Yeah, big future ahead. I don't know about you. Very late on, though, that I love the way that Newcastle do play out from the back, and they do it very well. They're very assured of themselves. But I did feel last 5 or 10 minutes, there's a few instances where I was just screaming to myself, just get rid of the ball. Stop trying to pass it about there. I don't care if you put it into row Z, but do not get caught in that position.
Fabian Schär towards the back end looked like a player who's in need of a rest. He looked like he was going to hand it to Leicester towards the end. I don't know about you. Obviously, you were sat up in the Melbourne. I was in the press box. It's sometimes hard to gauge the atmosphere around the stadium when you're not really in it like that. Did you feel like there was a nervy atmosphere the last 5-10 minutes?
Yeah.
For me, I felt like there was every time Leicester went anywhere near the final third, there was just sort of a collective, okay, just
there were a few takeaways, because obviously beforehand was brilliant. The display by War Flags was something that I think will stay with everybody for a long time. The atmosphere after, we'll get into that in a moment, but that was also brilliant. But I felt the game as a whole, there were pockets of it where the fans were in great voice, especially the kind of right at the start. And one or two of the chances kind of provoked a reaction. But as a whole, I think the crowd were a wee bit nervous, but not, like I say, nervous in a way that it affects the team, because I think they believe in the players and they believe that they would get over the line. Of course, as time goes on and you see Leicester trying to push, you are going to get a tad nervous. And I do think them last 5 minutes was quite interesting. Everyone was just willing the final whistle to go. And interesting, I set a timer on 5 minutes, and he was only 10 seconds over. So, thank goodness there was no Fergie time. But yeah, I did feel there was a little bit of nerves creeping in towards the end. But again, I think when the players needed that extra boost, the fans were there, roaring them on, and it's a real united effort.
Yeah, I thought just a special mention of the display beforehand. War Flags just keep outdoing themselves. I can't wait to see what they've got up their sleeve for the Champions League next season. A little bit of a flat atmosphere, I thought, at times in the game, but I think that was probably not helped by the fact that Newcastle were really, really struggling to break Leicester down. But certainly for me, the last 5-10 minutes, I was racked with nerves.
There was an interesting moment just after Nick Pope saved. I think Sven Botman gets the ball, and Leicester, it was like the referee's whistle had blown for a foul, because Botman just had the ball at his feet and he was kind of just walking forward, and then the Leicester didn't press, and you could just tell that neither side wanted the ball, neither side, they just wanted the whistle, because a point in the grand scheme of things was probably the best result for both of them. And it was really weird, and you could sense, I think, midway through the second half, when Newcastle maybe just took their foot off the accelerator slightly, that the crowd weren't really sure whether to be like, come on, let's get forward and get at them, or just go, okay, is it the worst idea just to sit back? And I think that changed when the nerves maybe a little bit crept in to the way they were playing in the last 5 minutes, when they looked a little bit nervous on the ball. And then that was maybe what set the crowd off. There was just a lot of interesting moments where I think in Newcastle of old, obviously if they're fighting for something and they don't go for it, the reaction would have been different. But yeah, it was just interesting to sense that, because I'm not even sure really towards the end what the fans wanted.
It was like one of those really weird World Cup group games where both teams know they need a draw and they're both through and they just knock it about their own half for a bit. There was times in that second half where it looked like it was a training session for both teams. No urgency.
Although I do have to say, watching Jacob Murphy warm up is something special, because every time the ball goes out, right, Jacob Murphy was like ushering the ball, come on, he wanted the ball back in. So he's trying to get the ball into play really quickly. And then he comes on, and there's a foul very late on over on the right-hand side, just in front of the dugout. And I think Botman maybe sets the ball down. Trippier walks over towards it, and Murphy just turns to the ball boy and just like ushers him to throwing the ball onto the pitch, which the ball boy does to waste time. And it's just like Jacob doesn't even know what he wants.
I don't think that's the thing. There was times where he thought, go forward, get the goal, Leicester are there for the taking. And also he thought, if Leicester don't want to attack you and they're not even going to try and win, why are you actually risking it? It was one of those very, very strange games. I tell you what, it sets up a lovely final day at the bottom of the table, which I'm excited for. I think Leicester giving themselves a little fighting chance, maybe.
Yeah, well, it's going to be interesting to see who goes down, and so refreshing that we don't have to worry about relegation from Newcastle United point of view. Here's what Eddie Howe had to say after the game against Leicester City, and he got a wee bit emotional.
Yeah, it feels amazing. It really does to share that moment with the supporters at the end there. Emotional moments, really, and very, very proud of everyone connected with the club, the supporters, the owners who were on the pitch at the end. It was amazing to be with them, and the whole squad with their families. Brilliant memories.
Where does that rank in your achievements as a manager?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I got asked that earlier, and I think the difficulty is there's no trophy. You know, it's an amazing achievement and an amazing thing, really, for where we've come from in such a short period of time. But it feels difficult to celebrate it like you've won a league or something like that. But yeah, it's right up there. Of course it is. It's an amazing thing at a very special club. No, not. This wasn't in our sights at that moment. I think we had escaped relegation impressively from the position that we're in. We were hopeful of improving and staying away from danger and growing the team to a position where maybe we could compete for Europe in a couple of seasons. So we've shot ahead of schedule. So with that comes big challenges for the future. But I think when you're in these moments, you have to take, when there's an opportunity of something like this, you have to take it. And that's where I can't compliment the players enough, because very easy for us to have faded away at some stage during a difficult run or a difficult moment, but we haven't, and that's credit to the mentality of the group.
Look at that. A group effort. It's not about Eddie Howe, is it? It's about Newcastle United, and that's the mentality that he's built there in the dressing room, and that includes also the fans as well. Fantastic to hear Eddie Howe speaking there. Let's talk a bit about what he said then. Not in our sight, and that's very true. I think if you'd asked any Newcastle United fan, and I went up yesterday before the game to speak to a few, and not one said that they thought they would have been in the top four. They would have laughed out of Tyneside. We said Newcastle are going to qualify for the Champions League. And I think when Eddie Howe wakes up this morning and he looks back on what he's achieved, he may have to pinch himself, because it is a fantastic achievement.
Yeah, Eddie Howe, he's sort of been having to give the same answers to us recently when we've been saying, just give us something about what you feel about the Champions League. And you generally do get the feeling that at the start of the season, he just wanted an improvement on last year, better the 10th place finish, maybe go on a little bit of a cup run. I don't think, by any means. And also the owners, by all means, wanted Champions League. I don't think they ever expected it to come this soon after the takeover. Well ahead of schedule, and it just means, next season is really important to make sure they try and keep that momentum going.
Peter says he was hoping for 7th. Neil says, quite an amazing achievement. Well done to everyone associated with the club. I mean, if I think back to our season preview, I said 11th to 13th, didn't I?
I feel like that's pretty pessimistic. Is it 11th to 13th?
And a cup run.
I think I said top half and a cup run, and I thought they'd finish 8th. I mean, that's been
This is, well, it's beyond anyone's wildest dreams, isn't it? And he mentioned there the owners. Obviously, you had the chairman over from Saudi Arabia to take in the game. You had Jamie Rubin, a man of stadium, and Dad Gadusi as well, as usual, in their seats. And not that I believe that they've ever once doubted about buying Newcastle United, but they got another real sense of why it was just such a brilliant decision, isn't it? Because the atmosphere, the scenes at the end, not to mention the fact they're in the top four, they'll be sitting there thinking, what a bargain we got.
Yeah, I think when you're getting quoted prices like 4 billion for Chelsea and 300 million for Newcastle, it seems like a bit of a no-brainer, doesn't it? I mean, as I've just touched on, Staveley, Gadusi, even Al Ramayan, I don't think any of them expected the success they've had in such a short period of time. The club, as you say, is looking like an absolute steal now at 300 million. And yeah, it's just where do they go next season? What's the game? Where can they finish? I've seen somebody in the comments there a lot earlier. I'm not sure who it was saying, can they win the title? I mean, Eddie Howe's certainly not going to make any promises about that. But what can they do? That's the question now.
It was John who said, can we win the Premier League next season? It sounds balmy, but so the top four at the start of the season, and City surely won't do it. It would be 4 seasons in a row, and that just doesn't happen. Well, I will say City are excellent, and they will strengthen in the summer as well. It's an interesting question, isn't it? Because I think my main concern right now is how they get the balance. How do they make sure this squad is capable of Champions League football and not slipping in the Premier League? Because I think the first question has to be, what is the Premier League hope for Newcastle next season? Do you take a decent run in the Champions League, maybe get into another final of one of the domestic cups and finishing 6th in the Premier League? Like, what is the aim next season in the Premier League? And I think whatever the answer is to that, and everyone will have different opinions, I think that then kind of molds what you do in the summer, obviously, and then what you do in the Champions League as well.
I think it's so. I mean, this happens so many times in the Premier League. You see a club maybe punch above their weight in the league, they reach Europe. The next season, they're at the other end of the table. Leicester win the league in 2016, fight relegation the next season. West Ham this season, going all the way in the Europa Conference League with a quite a hefty squad, smack bang in the relegation battle. So Eddie Howe last night came out and said, I don't think it's going to be a big spend. I don't think we've got the resources to do it. They're going to need to if they want to fight on both fronts. And I think it comes down to what you've just said. Do they prioritize another shot at trying to crack the big 6 in the Premier League, or do they say, right, we've got to try and get a memorable Champions League run under the belt?
Jan says the aim should be to win a cup and retain our Champions League position next season. Philip says Leicester won the title. Why can't we, especially with more top recruitment? The belief and feel-good factor is with us. Long shot, yes, but so is qualifying for the Champions League. Now, I think in an ideal world, you go, right, we will battle for the top 4 and we will have a Champions League run and a run to a final. But to do that, you're going to have to go all guns out this summer. You're not only going to have to buy top quality players, but you're going to have to buy enough players to thicken the squad out. And you don't want to just buy for buying sake, which is another element. And also, if you're looking at someone, let's even say, right, a Calvin Phillips, who I think you mentioned a few weeks ago, who is going to be cheaper than Declan Rice, plays in a similar position. He's going to be cheaper. He's not as good, but he's on that level, isn't he? That's still going to be a large chunk of your budget. So that, I think the biggest concern when you look at transfers is the person who's counting the pennies. They've got a huge job ahead of them, because you go out and buy one big player, spend 70, 100 million on them, and then look to bring in 4 or 5 with a remaining 100 million potentially. I mean, we don't know what the budget's going to be, but the person with the calculator in the hands, that's not a job I envy.
Yeah, I saw a good debate on social media last week about how many players Newcastle fans wanted them to sign. A lot of people saying, let's just spend 80, 90 million on 3 first-team players.
They need more than that.
They walk into the first team. But I agree. I think they need more. But, they need, I think, 6 or 7. We saw this season, January, Sheffield Wednesday in the FA Cup. Huge rotation by Eddie Howe. And that was the result. And I just think this squad, to fight on 4 fronts next season and try and maintain a top 4 position and have a good go at the Champions League and also end the domestic cup run, look, I love this squad a bit, but I just don't know if they've got the legs. So for me, yeah, you need another 6 or 7 in the summer. How though, whether he's bluffing us or not, doesn't really seem like he wants to do that.
Well, this is Eddie Howe, who did hint that Sean Longstaff wouldn't be seen again this season. And
Well,
there he
this
does
is what I
puts in
mean.
a man of the match performance against Leicester City. So, you'll rock up to St James's Park on July the 1st, and there'll be Mbappe and Neymar starting with black and white shirts. Ian says need to spend some money on great quality players. Graham says he wants European qualification and second round of the Champions League next season to keep the cash cow rolling. And Neil agrees with the conversation we're having. That's our major problem is, I think, the budgetary issue. Because, again, if I ask you now about the positions they need to strengthen, I'm looking at a left back.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at a centre back. I'm looking at a defensive midfielder. I'm looking at another striker. Now, that's 4 without then putting in, I think you'd want another wide man and potentially a right back. And, there's whispers of a goalkeeper as well. So, but I think the 4 definitely are left back, centre back, defensive midfielder, and a striker. Now, if you're looking to bring in someone to rival the players you've got in those positions already, they're going to have to be top quality players. They're not going to be cheap at all.
Yeah, I think when you look at that team and you look at the starting 11, for example, I think we've touched on that a lot the last couple of weeks. A left back, definitely. Love Darby a bit, but we need someone who's actually going to go forward a lot. Someone who's actually playing in left back. Centre midfielder, because they're so light, they probably need 2, I think. And still, personally, I think I would like another right midfielder. That alone, 3 first-team players, you're not going to get for under 100 million.
You're understanding now they know they're in the Champions League. Will the work start? I mean, I say the work will start. Obviously, they've probably already been picking up the phone and making tentative kind of reach outs. But now they know for sure Champions League football. Are you expecting the work to start straight away?
Oh, absolutely. I think as soon as it looked like a realistic possibility, I mean, that transfer shortlist changes massively. The type of player you can attract now that they're in the big competition, it's ridiculous. Again, it just goes back to what Howe wants to do. Does he want to go all out and get big name players that are going to instantly improve this team and make them a real force? Or does he think we need to be careful? We need, a bit of depth. We need to strengthen a number of positions. It's the balance that he's got to get right, but it's exciting. It's exciting because
it is.
There's so many possibilities.
But it's interesting, well, because you can attract a better quality of player without a shadow of a doubt. But again, those players will cost money. You look at the chap that we're linked to last week. I'm not even going to try and pronounce his name. Are you? There we go. That was just a noise. But yeah, that guy, 70 odd million is his release clauses. Again, that's a massive part of the budget. And then you look around and you say, okay, you spend that. And as we say, then you go and spend 10 million on this chap. You go and spend 15 million maybe on Tyler Adams or Philip Billen, who are good Premier League players. But then they're going to be expected to step up 11 play in the Champions League. And that balance is going to be massive because you're essentially relying on your £70 million midfielder to hit the ground running and to then, also raise the level of the people who are maybe the stopgaps, for want of a better phrase.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of these players have more than earned their shot at Champions League football next season. A lot of them that were on the scrap heap not too long ago, the level is just so different. They're going to have to really, really improve as a group, improve individually. And I just think the temptation's there to go out and sort of fix the problem by spending a lot of money. And I think that's what Howe's maybe against.
John says, from what I've seen of
Soboslai,
give me credit for trying. He says, I think it'd be a great signing, top class going forward with pace and a good work ethic and Eddie's stewardship. Philip says, I'd say we need 5, maybe 6, 50 million type players. Sorry, 5, 50 million type players, 250 million. Is that a realistic number?
No.
Can we do that financially? I don't know. Left back, centre back, number 10, right winger, and centre defensive midfielder. So Philip's got the targets we had in mind, although his calculator may be broken. I guess the key question everyone's asking, Aaron, really is about financial fair play. What does qualifying for the Champions League do for Newcastle on that front? And also the sponsor, the change in sponsor that we're all expecting to happen in the summer.
I mean, just qualifying for the Champions League alone, the financial benefits are ridiculous. Money for reaching the group stage, win bonuses, draw bonuses for every result you have. Huge sums of money if you make it out the group stage. We're talking, 15 odd million just for getting out the groups. Also, what it's going to do in terms of attracting sponsors, the options that they can do now financially, commercially, the sponsors are going to be wanting to get involved with the club because of, the global platform they're on. It's huge, but these are benefits that we probably feel in a season or two. Not right now. And I think it goes back to that point that they need to improve their revenue streams. They haven't got many sellable assets. Yes, there's money in the bank and the owners can pump a lot of money in if they want to, but they're trying to do it sustained. They're trying to do it slowly and naturally and organically. And Eddie Howe, every time we speak about it, he plays down the fact that they're going to go out and just be trigger happy with the credit card.
It's interesting as well, because if you go out and you buy a player who has been on the record, I want Champions League football. So let's look at Ruben Neves, for example. He pretty much said after the game, the last home game there at Wolves, that it was pretty much his last game for the club at home. That was the question, and he said, "I made no bones about it. I want to play Champions League football." So he set his stall out. You go and sign Ruben Neves, right? Do you think players like him who've said that's what I want to do, that's where I want to play, would be looking at it and going, "You qualified for the Champions League, but what's going to happen next season? What's going to happen this season after?" Are there some players who maybe don't want to join this train at the station it's at now, and they're waiting to see which station it's going to be at in 3 or 4 years' time?
I think yes, but probably not in the case of someone like Neves. Maybe I think just plucking a name off the top of my head, maybe Declan Rice. Let's say, I'm not saying Newcastle are ever going to go in for him. I think it's far too much money, but a really established club like Arsenal, who have been in and around the top 6 for 10 years, is it more attractive? I don't know, but I think for players like Neves, I think you only have to look at Wolf Flags last night and what they've done at the stadium, the atmosphere. James Maddison and Harvey Barnes last night will have been looking at that and thinking, it's a train I want to get on. I don't think they'll be put off by the, how early it is into this journey. I think, if anything, Trippier and Bruno have shown it's the right time to get in right now.
So I guess what that means is that you can attract a better level of player, but then there's levels within levels
absolutely.
as well, isn't it?
Newcastle United aren't going to be competing with Manchester City for players this summer, I don't think.
Christopher says, if it was your choice, who would you get? So, I mean, Aaron's is an easy one. He's going to name his firstborn after this player.
Musa, yeah.
Musa, yeah. Musa Diaby for you?
Yeah.
For me, if you're talking about the priority, I think it is a defensive midfielder to rival Sean Longstaff. Now,
is this not going to be the one you're going to name your firstborn after?
Go on,
James.
Do you know? No, I don't think he's a defensive midfielder at Newcastle United.
Soured on him.
See, Tyler Adams for me, but I don't think he's the number one name I'd go at. He's someone I'd like to see Newcastle sign, because I think he can do a job there, and he can be a really good squad player. He's been Leeds' best player this season, but I think they'll be setting their sights slightly higher. And there's a good chance it'll potentially be a defensive midfielder from one of the European leagues that very few of us can claim to be an expert on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they'll be casting the net far wide, hoping to find the next Botman and Bruno, which we all know don't go on trees. But yeah, I certainly think they'll be looking abroad as well.
I did joke with my wife last night that I've come up with a baby name for our firstborn in July, and it is just Nick Pope.
And how did you take that?
Not very well.
Oh, God. No, I'm surprised by that.
Not very well at all. But got a better reaction than Shearer. But yes, that Nick Pope save. That's what Nick did to me last night. But yeah, interesting to see how the transfer window works. But what's important to reference as well, because it's already happened this morning, it's happened throughout the season. Newcastle United have bought their way to top 4 football. And as I said right at the start, quite frankly, that is a load of nonsense. Okay, I could use a different word there, but we know sometimes there's a younger audience watching. A load of nonsense. I've got the stats here, right? Botman, Pope and Trippier, 37 games they featured in this season for Newcastle United, right? Okay, so they're number 1 in the list. However, you then go below that, Jacob Murphy, 35, 14 starts. Shea, 35 starts. Willock, 35 appearances, 31 starts. Almiron on 35, 28. Longstaff, 33, 28. Joe Linton, 32, 30. Callum Wilson, 30, 21. This team has been built upon many of the players who were here before the takeover, before Eddie Howe. And Eddie Howe deserves credit. His coaching staff deserve credit for improving these players. It's about hard work and commitment on the training pitch. It's not about money. That's played such a small factor. And it's about time that critics look a lot closer and do their research, because Eddie Howe does not get enough credit for the work he has done to these players.
I think if any critics are still saying that now openly on national media or radios or newspapers, they're really stealing a living. I mean, how many times do we have to go over this thing that, 60, 70% of Howe's starting 11 every week are players inherited? It's an absolute, it's baffling.
It is, and I just love the fact that we're sitting here and we're talking about some of our rivals, but none of us would be surprised if Jacob Murphy or Sean Longstaff were here and playing a massive role next season. I mean, Sean Longstaff was set to be out the door under Steve Bruce. I mean, Jacob Murphy didn't even have a career at Newcastle under Steve Bruce, and here they are playing instrumental roles in helping Newcastle get to the top four. Sean Longstaff, what a massive boost it was to have him back last night.
Yeah, really, really good. The whisper started to come out about an hour or two before kick-off that he was back, as you say, despite Eddie Howe on Friday. He hasn't even trained. He's not going to be back for Monday. Very sneaky by Eddie. But yeah, I say they didn't need Joe Linton because they didn't really need to control the game, but I thought Longstaff, again, doing what he does best, good on the ball, grafting off it. And I think, yeah, him and Murphy and all these players, they've got a part to play, whether it's going to be, starting every week next season, who knows? But I can't see any of them going.
He nearly had a Steven Gerrard moment, though, didn't he?
The slip.
Oh, could you imagine? I mean, he recovered, though.
Yeah.
Fair play to him.
That matters, the recovery.
He recovered, and we'll not need to mention it again. But yeah, tremendously Longstaff back in the side, full of running, could have had a goal himself. And what a boost it was to have him back. Bruno Guimaraes looked like he was back to his best. However, I can't go through the whole season complaining about VAR without mentioning the fact that VAR, in my view, and someone will come back with a rule book and say, well, where was the intent, etc., etc. But if you're a Leicester City fan, you're absolutely raging that Bruno did not get sent off for that challenge.
And you know what it is? I haven't seen one Newcastle United fan disagree with you. I think it was a pretty unanimous call as to think, how on earth has he got away with that? Is it because of how early in the game it was? Is it because there wasn't intent? Who knows? But I tell you what, John Terry and Dean Smith, who were, a matter of meters away from me, were not happy. John Terry, full of expletives at the fourth.
You can't blame them. It was
a very poor decision. Yeah.
What I mean, again, I don't want to beat the drum, but what on earth are VAR looking at? If they're like, someone said to me, I think it might be on the Sky commentary as well, something about the fact that he maybe a little bit pulled out or something like. But just look at it for what it was. It was a horrendous challenge.
Yeah, I agree. And the fact that Andre Marino, the referee, wasn't even asked to go up the monitor or anything like that, it was he got away with one very early doors.
And that would have changed the entirety of the game, wouldn't it? But what I was impressed with, obviously, it's a very early booking. And there was an instance late in the first half, a very rare venture into Newcastle's half. And Leicester running towards, I can't remember who the player was. And you can see Bruno, he goes to grab him, then he pulls out because he realizes he's on a yellow and he pulls him down, he's off. And again, it just shows a level of maturity there. Look, he's absolutely crackers, for want of a better phrase. And I love watching him. He's eccentric. You don't know what he's going to do. He's passionate. But it was good to see, refreshing to see that, he can't think about what he needs to do because, other players maybe would have just pulled that guy back and then he would have got a second yellow.
There's a couple of times in the first and second half where he goes to sort of dive into a 50-50 as well as that and thinks a bit better of it. Yeah, I wouldn't have liked to see him suspended on the final day. So, yeah, good to see he stayed on the pitch.
Graham says, it was an orange for me. No intent, but a lucky boy. Philip says, what about Barnes, Madison, Ward-Prowse? I know people will say they got their teams relegated, but look at Pope if they stay up. I'm not sure you mean stay up, but yeah, etc. But yeah, them three names.
Yeah, we had this discussion last week. I'm really not against signing players from relegated teams. I think sometimes you can get absolute bargains, as you know, Ginny Wijnaldum leaving Newcastle probably proves. I think, yeah, I think if Leicester go down, there's definitely deals to be made there. Everton maybe not so much, Leeds maybe, and Southampton certainly. So, yeah, all three of those names I wouldn't say no to.
And of course, they'll have various suitors. Newcastle are definitely going to have to compete against a few teams to get the players in the summer. There's an interesting comment I wanted to read you from Neil Lennon, obviously ex Leicester City midfielder, ex Celtic boss, and he says that Newcastle United could be the surprise package in the Champions League next season. The full quote, he was speaking to BBC 5 Live, and he said, "They've had a brilliant season, some brilliant individuals, but the team as a whole has been the star. You've got to give huge credit to Howe. They've been good to watch, resilient at times. They've got to a cup final, and I think they could be the surprise package in the Champions League next year. They'll invest in the team. St James Park will be a cauldron on a European night, and that will stand them in good stead going into the tournament because they'll need that home support. But can they be the surprise package?"
Good to see, firstly, that he's forgiven his feud with Shearer clearly after all those years. Look, this is Eddie Howe's Newcastle United. Never say never. Nobody give them a chance of reaching the top four. I suspect it'll be a similar case in the Champions League next season. You never know. As Lennon says there, those Champions League nights back at St James's are going to be, got goosebumps just thinking about them. It's going to be a really hard place to come. As to whether it can be a surprise package, I don't know. Maybe.
Fingers crossed.
Well, look, fingers crossed. I would love them to go on a sort of similar type run that they did in the Europa League 10 years ago. But
Well, this is the issue because then their league
this is exactly
suffered.
what I mean. Yeah.
But make no bones about it, Eddie Howe and the owners, they're not just going to go into the Champions League and make up the numbers, are they?
No, well, our colleague Hugh Kelly asked exactly that question last night and got a typical Howe answer, and that is they want to win every game, no matter whether they're playing, Leicester at home or Real Madrid away. And I can guarantee that, not like their European campaign 10 years ago, they won't just go out and sign Vernon and Anita this summer. So I think they'll be in safe hands.
I think Vernon gets bad press. Vernon and Anita alongside other players. I know what you're saying. I'm just going to say Vernon and Anita alongside other players, right? He would have been a cracking little player.
That wasn't a dig at Vernon and Anita. I'm saying they will go out and spend more than just a couple of million on one player after reaching European football.
However, you raise a good point because we think back to Vernon's arrival at Newcastle and what didn't happen afterwards, i.e. more players getting signed. And like you said, that is the point to be made. They are not just going to go and sign one or two players this season. They're going to sit down properly. They're going to build a proper squad and have a real good go at it.
Yeah, absolutely. And whether it's, 3 or 4 decent additions or whether it's a bit more of a revamp and they go and get 7 and 8 first team and a bit more depth, it's all going to be meticulously planned. Given their record so far, I'd trust Dan Ashworth with my money. So yeah, I think when we sit here in August and we get ready for the new season, this Newcastle team will look in a lot better shape than it is now, and that's saying something.
Let's have a word then about the owners on the pitch at half time. Bit of a kickabout, money donated to the food bank. The chairman, you had Medad Kadusi, Jamie Rubin, and Amanda was down there as well. Let's just do a bit of analysis on the whole half-time challenge.
Don't think Murdard will be getting signed anytime soon. God bless him. He give it a good go. Ruben, though, could maybe do a job.
Decent money. I don't think he's wearing proper football boots. He was wearing trainers.
Yeah.
Murdard had some what looked like orange Predators on, though.
Yeah, he went all out. He definitely bought them this week. And look, Yasser, I feel his pain. He got his excuses in early to Justin Lockwood and said, "I've just had ACL surgery," which I can attest is a brutal surgery. But he gave it a good go, didn't he? Three attempts, I think he had.
Yeah, and then he gave it. Have I seen an image of him wearing his suit has got a Newcastle United crest and
took his jacket off and it had like a black and white stripes and Newcastle badge in.
What do you
think? The crowd there.
What do you think he would have taken away from last night? Because obviously when he visits, there's always a big fanfare about it. We've seen previously that he visited, didn't he, before they went out and signed Alexander Isak. When Newcastle felt it was originally too much money, then Callum Wilson goes off injured against Man City, wasn't it? and all of a sudden the deal happens. Albermon is here. What does he take away from last night? Or do you think he's already made his conclusions and last night he was there for the occasion?
I think he was mostly there for the occasion last night. You see the games he's been to previously: Tottenham at home, first game of the new regime; Arsenal last season. Similar to last night. We did try and press Eddie Howe on this after the game, and he was giving nothing away about what had been said between him and the players. But we understand that they will be talking this week with the executives about what they plan to do in the summer. What will he take away? I think he'll take away another really good night, and I think he knows. Look, given what PI have invested, they know that they can really improve this team, and I think if they can get top four, what they've got, the possibilities are endless if they just get the money out of it this summer.
And they'll definitely think it's been a good investment so far.
Absolutely.
And also tomorrow, big day for us. We're trying out on the pitch tomorrow as well, aren't we, for the play on the pitch?
I won't be there, unfortunately.
I thought you were going to come and show support from the stands.
Physio's giving me the no good, so unfortunately I won't be there. But we'll have a good representation from the Cron in the media game.
Yep, I will be hobbling back to the office, no doubt, with my hamstring having popped out. I'll be putting a little video together as well of the day. So watch out for that on our YouTube video. At full time, Aaron, obviously you had the lap of honour, and Amanda Staveley, very emotional, tears in her eyes. I think she was caught up by not quite believing what Nick Pope had to do at the end, not quite believing what Newcastle United achieved, and obviously just the emotion. Some critics will say, well, it's too much, what have you, but you get the sense that she really believes in what's happening here.
Yeah, I've seen a few critics of Staveley in the last couple of months saying that doesn't seem genuine and it's inauthentic, but I really don't get that. I generally do see a co-owner there who really has bought into the project, especially having to wait so long to get her hands on it. You saw the interaction she had with Graham Jones last night. I mean, this is Graham Jones. It's not even Howard Tyndall. Graham Jones got a big minute-long hug, kisses on the cheeks, a really in-depth conversation after. She's chatting to Pope, Bruno, Botman. I think she's really, really bought into the club and what it means to be the owner of the club. And when you compare that to some of the owners in Premier League football at the minute, I think that can only be a good thing.
Yeah, I'm just now trying to see whether Nick Pope actually managed to get into the team photo, because it's gone around on social media that, bless him, Pope, he was getting interviewed as the big team photograph was happening. So I was just trying to quickly find it there, but obviously, I mean, there's so much content gone out last night. Now, is he in here? I don't think he is, I mean, my eyesight's not brilliant, but I don't, because he was behind. I can't see it.
I don't know. There's too many people in that photo to see, but I did see that everyone's getting the team photo. Serena's all cheer and shouting. Nick Pope's doing his media duties in behind.
I mean, look, that's commitment to the cause. It's quite the photograph. Right, we're zooming in now. The chairman. Now, well, we should be able to see him behind if he is there, right? Oh, I love that. I just look at the expressions on the fans behind him as well. Absolutely brilliant. I don't think he is in. So I'm sure someone's already photoshopped him in. Okay. And made sure he is in. But what a night for some of these players. I mean, the one that stands out is Dan Burn. Imagine if you'd said to Dan Burn that not only Newcastle are going to qualify for the Champions League, they're also going to do it with you in the side as a left back. I mean, your player's a left winger on the final home game of the season because that's how poor the opposition are. But they'll also be singing your name on the terraces, and not just any terrace, the Gallagher end.
With a fantastic chant to boot as well, by the way, not just any old bog standard chant. Look, for me last night, it was when I got home from the game and started working, and Jacob Murphy, I saw him getting interviewed, and I saw Sean Longstaff getting interviewed. That was what it was about for me. These players that have supported the club for years, they've seen heartaches. They're now, a lot of them, I mean, Murphy and Longstaff especially, seemingly didn't have a future at the club. Now they're playing such a big part. And I just think, and I know this might not be a popular thing to say, but if Newcastle United ever go like Man City and it's a team of superstars and foreign imports and players that they've signed and they don't have any, sort of relationship with the club prior, I Just not sure if it'll feel as special as last night will, with all those sort of local lads on the pitch.
Well, I've written a piece and a bit on Lion later, but in many ways, it feels like you also have another 14, 15 adopted Geordies. You have the players you mentioned there, Longstaff, Byrne, Elliot Anderson. They know about the tales of all. They know about the entertainers. They know about Sir Bobby in the new camp, and they know hopefully about the magic of Supermac and the clinicalness of Ward Jackie, and they can tell them stories. But also, I get the feeling that actually the players they've got in this squad at the moment, even Bruno all the way from Brazil, Kieran Trippier, they know exactly the history of this club, the traditions, the legends that have gone before them, and they know what those stories mean to this fan base. But they also, and more importantly, want to create their own legacy here. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, and credit needs to go to Eddie Howe for that, because he's said numerous occasions how he's tried to get the history. He's spoken to people that were there in the 90s. He's, informed the players about this is how long it's been from a trophy. This is what they did, back in the glory days. And yeah, look, we haven't actually touched on it yet. Howe feels like an adopted Joy Dunn. He's only been here, 18 months? He left the South Coast where he was, loved at Bournemouth. It was all he'd known pretty much apart from Burnley. And already he's sort of written his name at the history books.
And you know what the best thing about that is, though? In a few weeks' time, when it's all settled and Newcastle are planning for the United States, and maybe a few transfers have already been sorted out, he's not just going to sit back and think, well, I've achieved here. If he finishes his time at Newcastle, whenever that might be, and all he's got in his pocket is getting Newcastle to a cup final and the top four,
he'll be good.
He'll be good because he doesn't want to end it there. He wants to win something. That's what he wants to do. And I love the fact that he set those standards for himself and for the players and for the owners as well, to say, look, we can't just be top four contenders. That's not the legacy I want to build.
There's a great answer from him last night where he was asked in the press conference, where does this rank in your achievements in your career? And he said, it's not a trophy. It's an amazing achievement with an amazing group. We're delighted, we're proud, but I want to win silverware at this club. And I just think how refreshing is that to hear that from a manager who, when after Chelsea this weekend and the players go off on holiday and they go back to Brazil and the America and all that, Eddie Howe, bless his poor wife, Eddie Howe will be there working out what to do next season, working out what they need. And that's just the type of manager he is. There's no time to stand and pat yourself on the back, because you know that it can all change so quickly.
Gleb says, imagine how many more Andersons, Longstaffs and Mileys there would be in 10 years because of the inspiration instilled in the fans.
Great point.
Yeah, fantastic. And Anderson's a great role model for those just a couple of years younger than him who have got ambitions to be in that side. And Miley, obviously, with his new contract. Yeah, and I think that's the other thing. We're talking about the amount of money they're going to spend on new rivals, but also there's a big focus on improving the quality within the academy. And hopefully in 3 or 4 years' time, we will really start to see the benefits of that at Newcastle United.
Yeah, we saw it last summer. Obviously, Dan Ashworth came in and said, we need to pick the standard up of the youth teams. They've tried to do that with a couple of decent additions from other teams around the UK. I think that'll only increase over the next couple of years. Newcastle are now going to have to play in the UEFA Youth League. Now that they're in the Champions League, that is going to be a huge step up for their youngsters. So I think we'll see a lot more investment in the youngsters in the next couple of years.
Derek says he took your poor comment on board when he made the same comment recently about relegated players coming to Newcastle. But he says, I've looked and I can't see many other examples of successes at the top end of the table. He points out Calvin Phillips helped Leeds stay up and then went off to Manchester City. Thoughts on that one?
So what's he saying, that he isn't?
He doesn't want team players who've gone down.
Nah, I'm sorry. I don't buy into it. I think if you add someone like, look what the likes of Maddison and Barnes has done the last couple of years at the top level. I think you can't write them off after just a bad season for whatever reason.
Interesting. What did you make of the fact Maddison didn't start yesterday?
Smith came out last night and said it was tactical. He explained his reasons. He wanted someone different off the bench. They had to try someone new because it hasn't been working. I don't think it was anything to do with any potential move. That's just my opinion.
But is it also not hint at the? I mean, so he wasn't in the side because he doesn't have the discipline to do what they wanted from the off. He was more on the bench because he could be that special weapon to bring off.
They wanted to play 4-4-2 and defend very deeply. That leaves, not a lot of room for Maddison and Barnes in that team. When you're not attacking, they're not really defensive players. He wanted different options off the bench, which we saw. Maddison came on at halftime. Barnes came on when they changed that formation. I think he just wanted something else. And Smith was asked about it last night because obviously Barnes and Maddison are the two top scorers, and he said it was nothing personal. They just needed to make a sacrifice for the team.
Philip says Howe is only going to get better as a manager once he has European experience and going up against the best. 100% agree with you on that, Philip. Just finally on last night's game, we talk about the sellable assets they've got, and there aren't many. But do you think it was a farewell for a few of them last night?
Yeah, certainly. I think very, very nice to see Loris Karius and Emil Kraft invited back on the pitch full time. Neither of them have played a Premier League game this season. I think that'll be the last we see of Karius. I think, a few players out of contract. Yeah, I think for a lot of them, and Eddie Howe was asked about it last night, I think for a lot of them have been very emotional because they won't get to continue this journey. I won't be surprised to see a lot of them go this summer.
But they will have the memories of being part of that team that beat the drop a few seasons ago and then qualified for the Champions League.
Yeah, exactly. And you only have to, Isaac Hayden summed it up perfectly summer. He said, the lads know where this club's going. The likes of me, Shelby, we've done such a good thing. We've taken the club from the Championship and kept them in the Premier League. We know that we can't be on the journey forever, but we've done our part and we can just support them. And I think that's the way that a lot of them will look at it. The club's only going one way, and unfortunately for some of them, they just, they don't have a future.
It would be interesting to see who does indeed get shipped out. But like I said, those who do fantastic servants for the club. Now, I'm going to finish off with a bit of trivia.
Oh, okay.
Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Actually, before I do that, I've just thought of something I also want to say. Eddie Howe, manager of the season. We spoke about it last week. For me, him now securing top 4 football, regardless of everything else that's happened.
It's a shoe-in.
He has to have it.
Got to win it.
Just think about that achievement, man. Like, actually, when you break it down, you think about that achievement. If Man City hadn't won the title, it would have, they were expected to win the title. Arsenal, make no bones about it, bottled it. And I'm sick of people saying Arsenal didn't bottle it. They bottled it, right? So I'm sorry. I'll tell you, that does not win manager of the season. Marco Silva, good job. But then if you're Thomas Frank, you're fuming you're not in that list, by all accounts. I think that's a bizarre one. Eddie Howe has to win manager of the season.
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit worried Pep's going to steal it because of another title and, all this stuff about them winning the treble, which shouldn't have any impact on the Prem award. But look, we all know Eddie Howe should win it. It'll be a shame if he doesn't.
Has to win it. And is there a chance to reopen the nomination list and hire Nick Pope save of the season? Have they done the save of the season?
Not sure. Not entirely
He'd
sure.
win that as
You'll
well.
have to write the Premier League if not.
Fuming. Yeah, you wait. That's my YouTube video for tomorrow. Quick question there from Darren. He says he can't see the bottom 3 changing now. Everton, luckiest club in the Premier League, just staying up. Do you think he's right? Is the bottom 3 as it is? Obviously, Southampton are down. Is it then Leeds and Leicester?
Yeah, I think Leeds, that their fate was pretty much sealed on Sunday when they got beat off West Ham. Leicester have given themselves a chance, but when you look at Everton's game Sunday, I think it's just going to be a game too far for them. And I agree. I think Everton are lucky to stay in the division again. 2 years in a row, they've nearly snuffed it.
Can't wait for the parade outside Goodison when they're doing it. Do stay up. Newcastle, will they finish 3rd? Or does it not really matter? You don't care?
Honestly, I'm just not even bothered at all. Actually, I'm not. Hopefully, I'd like to see them end with a win on Sunday, but obviously Man United got that game in hand, and yeah, it doesn't really matter. They're over the line. That's all that matters.
There we have it. Right. Trivia time.
Let's hit me.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
So Newcastle United's last game in the Champions League against Barcelona, March 19th, 2003, 2-0 to Barcelona.
Yeah.
I'm very simply just going to ask you
Yep.
to name the starting 11.
Shea Given and goal.
Yep.
Andy Griffin at right back.
Yep.
Titus Bramble centre back.
Yep.
Andy O'Brien centre back.
Yep.
Olivia Bernard, left back.
Yeah,
Solano, right midfield.
correct.
Dyer and Ginas in the middle.
Correct.
Robert, left midfield.
Correct.
Shearer, Bellamy.
Now, the skeptic of me says you definitely did this yesterday.
Honestly, I don't know what you're talking about.
You
I
definitely
don't know
did this
what
yesterday.
you're talking about. Honestly,
Definitely
that is
did this
just
yesterday.
top tier Newcastle United knowledge there. Sorry.
Let us know in the comments if you believe Aaron had not already done that bit of trivia and then just tried to bluff his way through like it was a surprise. Next week, I'm going to make it very, very difficult for you to get any marks on any trivia that I put forward to you. But as always, thank you very much, guys, for tuning in to myself and Aaron on the Monday show once again on a Tuesday. It's been an absolute pleasure. There are a few tickets remaining for our live event this Thursday at the Tyneside Irish Centre. Do go and get yourself a ticket. Just £5, raising really important funds for the food bank. Nobby Solano, the main guest, alongside Aaron as well. Simon Bird from The Mirror, Matthew Raisbeck from BBC Newcastle, the writer, and Kieran Kelly. It's going to be an absolutely fantastic evening from myself and Aaron. We shall see you guys very soon.